Have you ever caught a younger woman looking at you and immediately told yourself you were just imagining things? It's a moment most men keep quiet, but what if I told you your gut feeling was completely right? Welcome back to Female Mind Decode. Hit that subscribe button if you're new here. If you're enjoying this so far, smash that like button because we're going deep into why this happens. Think about those totally normal moments. You're sitting in a quiet coffee shop, walking down a sidewalk, or standing in a room full of people at a party. You look up and realize a younger woman is looking straight at you. She isn't looking through you or at the guy standing behind you. She is looking at you. In that split second, something wakes up inside you before you even have a chance to think. But then the logic kicks in and it moves fast. You tell yourself it was nothing. You decide there is no way she meant that look the way it felt. You talk yourself out of what your body already knew, hide that feeling away, and just keep moving. But the memory stays with you. And the reason it sticks around is because it wasn't a fantasy or a trick of the light. It was something your nervous system caught before your doubts had time to shut it down. That connection was real. But here's the crazy part. Even though everyone talks about age like it's the only thing that matters, it doesn't work the way people think. There is a story that has been told for a long time, claiming that once a man reaches a certain age, he is basically invisible or out of the game. It says the year you were born puts you in a box where you can't feel that kind of connection anymore. But that story isn't based on how attraction actually works. It's just cultural noise, and it's loud enough that many men have started believing it without ever asking if it's true. What gets lost in all that noise is something you really need to understand. There is a deeper reason why a younger woman finds herself drawn to a man like you, and it has almost nothing to do with your money, your status, or how much confidence you pretend to have. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Before we get to that big reason, there is something she is probably not saying out loud. Honestly, she might not even have the words for it yet. She just knows how it feels to be near you. So the first step is to quiet all those outside voices so we can look at what is actually happening under the surface. Hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss our next video where we break this down even further. We all know how the world reacts to this kind of connection. The judgmental looks, the rude questions, the weird assumptions, and it's very likely you've started believing some of those things yourself. There might be a voice in your head telling you this is just your ego talking, or that you're just struggling to accept where you are in life. That voice usually sounds very sure of itself, but here is what that voice never tells you. Attraction doesn't care about logic or social rules. It happens in the body. Your nervous system doesn't check a calendar before deciding how to react to someone. It reads signals. What a woman is actually feeling when she's drawn to you goes way deeper than what's on the surface. She is subconsciously checking to see if she feels safe around you. She's looking for a man whose foundation is steady and strong. She's sensing whether you are actually present with her or if you're just trying to manage an impression. She wants to know if being close to you lets her be more of herself, or if she has to hide who she is. Those signals have almost nothing to do with how many years you've been alive. They have everything to do with the man those years shaped you into. The real issue isn't age. It's that most men try to understand this attraction using the completely wrong frame. Which part of this surprised you most? Drop it in the comments below and let me know. Most men are judging themselves by a yardstick that wasn't even made for them. They focus on things like speed, being the new thing, or having a very specific physical look. Using that scale will always make you feel like you're falling short, but that's not the scale she's actually using. The traits many men have spent years apologizing for, like being more deliberate, carrying a serious vibe, or not feeling the need to constantly prove themselves, aren't weaknesses you need to fix. They are the exact signals she is looking for. Some women tune into those signals more clearly than anything else a man could offer. But here's the crazy part. Most people get the dynamic between an older man and a younger woman completely wrong. They think it's just a transaction, like she's just putting up with things to get something else in return. They expect her feelings to have an expiration date, or they imagine the age gap is a wall she'll eventually hit. If you're enjoying this perspective so far, smash that like button. It really helps the channel out. None of those typical ideas account for what women actually find valuable, especially those who have moved past the chaos of their early 20s. The years you've spent surviving real struggles aren't a hurdle she has to jump over. In many cases, those years are the exact reason she's drawn to you. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Think about what a life of actually paying attention builds in a person. It gives you the ability to be in a room without needing that room to spin around you. It builds the capacity to let things happen naturally without trying to force a specific outcome. It produces a certain kind of density, a sense of being grounded. It's the quality of a man who has weathered enough storms that he doesn't need to advertise his strength anymore. He has a place to stand that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval for its stability. Think about what a woman is really seeking deep down, beyond what her social circle says is appropriate or what looks good in a photo. The deeper layer of her mind, the part that picks up on vibes before she even thinks about them, is searching for that groundedness. It wants that quiet, steady energy. It wants a man who has nothing left to prove to her. By the way, if you want more insights like this, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss our next video. Imagine a younger guy entering a party. You can usually see a certain energy in him, a bit of a competitive edge, and a need to prove that he matters in the room. He might be loud or funny or very likable, but you can tell he's working hard for it. Then there is the other kind of man. He just sits down. He laughs at something because he actually finds it funny, not because he needs everyone else to join in. He isn't scanning the room to see how people are reacting to him. His presence has a weight to it that doesn't beg for attention. She notices that man. She might not understand why she noticed him right away, but something in her finally feels like it can exhale. But here's the thing, noticing him is just the start. What keeps her thinking about a man for days afterward is something much more specific. There is a huge assumption that women only care about looks, but that misses the bigger picture. For many women, especially as they get more life experience, the most attractive thing about a man isn't visual. It is the feeling of what it's like to just exist near him. That feeling comes from tiny things she notices without even trying. She hears how he speaks and notices if his voice is easy rather than rushed. It's not that he's slow, it's that he's not anxious. Which part of this surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments below. She is constantly picking up on whether he is talking to actually say something or just trying to control what she thinks of him. She really notices those little pauses. You see, a guy who is scared of silence will try to fill every single gap. He thinks that if the talking stops, he's losing her interest or losing ground. But a man who is actually comfortable in his own skin lets the conversation breathe. She watches to see if his eyes really land on her. Not like she's an object to judge or an audience for his show, but like a person he's truly curious about. Then there's the whole issue of performing. It's a hard thing to explain, but you feel it immediately. When a guy is constantly adjusting how he acts just to make a certain impression, something inside her picks up on that extra effort. Her brain is quietly working overtime to check if what she's seeing is the real deal. But here's the crazy part. That constant checking is actually exhausting for her. It creates this weird wall that makes it almost impossible to get close. Now compare that to a man who is just himself. He isn't managing his brand or obsessively watching her face for a reaction. When she meets someone like that, the opposite happens. All that high-level guarding she usually does just disappears. She doesn't have to double-check everything he says against some hidden version of who he really is. She finally settles in. If you're finding this interesting so far, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into how these connections work. She might even realize halfway through dinner that she hasn't checked her phone a single time. There's no need to brace herself for a mean comment or a weird competitive vibe. She's just there, breathing easier. She might not be able to put into words exactly what changed, but she knows something is different, and to her, it matters more than anything else. But wait until you hear this next part, because it's something older men almost always underestimate. It's the way they handle silence. Most men feel like a pause in the conversation is a massive problem that needs a fast fix. They'll scramble for a joke or jump to a new story before the last moment has even finished. Eventually, she's going to let a quiet moment happen. She might just drift into her own thoughts for a second. How he handles that quiet tells her something she can't learn any other way. If he rushes to fill the void, she sees that he needs constant noise to feel safe. But if he just stays there in the quiet, if he sits with it without feeling awkward or rushed, he's telling her something she's been dying to find. He's showing her that he's okay with himself. He's saying that the space between words doesn't freak him out and that he doesn't need her to perform just to keep him comfortable. He holds that space for both of them. When that happens, she usually feels drawn even closer. The silence stops feeling like a hole and starts feeling like a bridge that connects them. This isn't some trick you can practice in the mirror. You can't fake this by acting. It only happens when a man has truly reached a point where he is at home with himself. It's a place where quiet doesn't feel empty. It feels like a room with enough air to breathe. This leads to something huge that a lot of people totally miss. Everything we've talked about, the stillness, the calm, the ease with silence, it all comes from one place. When a younger woman is attracted to an older man, she isn't being silly or impulsive. Most of the time, she's making a choice based on what she's learned the hard way. She's probably already tried the normal path. She's had the relationships with guys her own age that looked right on paper, but felt shaky in real life. She's been in those partnerships where she had to stay on high alert 24/7. Those were connections where love was definitely there, but peace was missing. Which of these traits do you think is the most important? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Perhaps she dealt with a partner who flipped from being sweet to being hostile without any warning at all. Maybe simple arguments turned into massive fights that cost her way more energy than they were worth. She spent all her time managing someone else's moods instead of actually enjoying her own life. She knows exactly how that feels in her body, the heavy weight of it. She has experienced that specific kind of burnout that comes from loving someone who hasn't quite figured out who they are yet. Now, she isn't pointing fingers or trying to blame anyone. She just knows what she doesn't have the energy for anymore. If you're finding this relatable so far, go ahead and smash that like button. It really helps the channel. But here is where it gets interesting. When she finally meets a man who is already solid, everything changes. She sees a man who can handle a disagreement without turning it into a deep wound. He doesn't feel the need to win every single conversation. He just stays calm and stable. When that happens, her entire nervous system reacts. It's the physical relief you feel when you're bracing for a crash that never actually happens. When they have a real disagreement, instead of him pulling away or getting defensive, he just explains how he feels with a steady voice. She marks that down as true safety. Now, this is the crazy part. When he doesn't need her to give up her own beliefs just so he can feel powerful, she notices it immediately. She might tell a close friend later that he doesn't make her feel small, or that he isn't scared of how smart or confident she is. But what she is really saying is that she finally feels safe. It's a kind of peace she hasn't found before. It's not that the men from her past were bad people, it's just that they hadn't reached the level of maturity she actually needed. She isn't looking for a father figure or trying to repeat an old habit. She is simply spotting something she has been searching for and finding it, maybe for the first time, in this one man. If you want to understand more about these deep connections, make sure to hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss our next video. But wait until you hear this next part, because it's the deepest layer of the whole situation. There is one specific thing she looks for more than money, looks, or success. She is watching to see if he will let her be the full, unedited version of herself. Without even knowing they're doing it, a lot of men put a weird kind of pressure on their partners. They are only happy when a woman is being easy or agreeable. As soon as she gets difficult or shows big emotions or strong opinions, they start to back off. Their mood depends on her staying easy to handle. She can feel that pressure even if he never says a word. So she starts changing herself to fit. She hides her real opinions. She keeps her biggest feelings tucked away. She makes herself smaller so she doesn't become a problem for him to deal with. But here is the difference. A man who is actually secure in himself won't do that to her. When she says something bold or gets emotional, he doesn't pull back in fear. When she is going through something messy and human, he doesn't try to fix it or run away. He just makes space for all of it. Imagine her testing the waters, sharing an opinion she's not sure he'll like. She is watching his face. If he stays open and doesn't flinch, she realizes it's safe to be her real self. She can finally stop editing who she is. That is what she's been waiting for this whole time. Not a perfect guy, but a guy she doesn't have to hide from. It was never really about his age at all. At the end of the day, she's just asking one question. Does she feel more like herself when she's with him? Not just prettier or more wanted, but truly fully herself. Which of these traits do you think is the biggest green flag? Drop it in the comments. The complicated version, the messy version, the part of her that thinks too much and feels everything deeply and doesn't always fit into a perfect box. She is watching to see if being around him gives her the room to grow, or if she has to shrink herself down just to fit into his life. But here is the crazy part. What a man actually builds over a long, real life, often without even trying, is the ability to let the people around him take up more space. That is honestly such a rare thing to find in this world. When she is with a man like that, she finally stops explaining herself. It's not because she has suddenly gone quiet, but because she knows she isn't being judged or measured anymore. Her laughter becomes real instead of a performance. Even the silence between them doesn't feel like a mistake or a failure. Now, this is where it gets interesting. This didn't happen because he did something massive or heroic. It happened simply because he stopped pulling against her. If you are finding this helpful, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. You see, the number of years between them is really just a number. What she is actually feeling is the safety, the strength, and the openness of a man who doesn't need her to make herself smaller. That specific quality doesn't belong to any one age or decade. It's just rare, and she saw it in him immediately. The question so many men ask is whether they are too old for this, but that was never the right thing to wonder. The real question is whether a man's presence gives someone else the freedom to be themselves. If the answer is yes, and for a man who has actually learned from his life, it usually is, then those years aren't a problem at all. They are the very reason she wants to be close to him. The right woman doesn't just deal with his age. She loves what that age turned him into. There is nothing to prove here and no big speech needed. You just have to be that man, fully and without any excuses. So stop regretfully looking at the years behind you. Those years are exactly what created the person she is looking at right this second. You aren't a lesser version of a younger man. You are the result of everything you survived and learned. When you stop trying to play by other people's rules and just let your true self be present, something becomes very clear. She wasn't counting the years between you. She was seeing how solid you are, and she truly loved what she found. Which part of this surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments below.